Julia and Marion, you've both experienced the New Zealand trip with for Earth Science teachers, and I just wanted to ask you both what you think the most important experience was along the way for students, if you had to pick one.
I would say, can I choose North and South?
Yeah, one from
Okay,
North,
one
and
from
South.
North. From North, I would say the activeness of the geology around here is astounding. For students to actually see the volcanoes and the amount of activity that's actually happening underground all the time is what I found really useful. In the South, the experience of the mountains and the glaciers and that surface geology that we just don't get in Australia is really important for them to be able to connect to.
Very cool, Julia.
I'd start off with Hell's Gate because it is a total experience. Your ears, your eyes, your hands, the heat coming through your feet, and it's fabulously geothermal, and it ties into the whole moving of continents, building of mountains, right down to the bloop of the mud puddles and the sulphur. I think it's just an immersion experience for the kids. And moving from there down south to Mount Cook, where you can see natural forces working, the glaciers, the rain, the water, those big braided river channels, which for West Australian students are just words until you see them. And you're walking in amongst them again, it's an immersion experience. And going in the little wobbly boat out to look at the icebergs and the front of the glacier, and you realise a glacier isn't an ice cube. It's a whole dynamic thing with different colours and noises and excitement. I think the fun that weaves through both those experiences is critical for understanding.
Okay, so if I was to ask you about the White Island experience,
Yes.
what did you get out of White Island?
The thrill of walking on the edge of a live volcano, to know that you're actually walking around a volcano that could blow at any moment. I think the discussion that you had been there before, to say this did not look like this 6 months ago, to know that there's all that activity occurring day by day, and that if you go back again, the whole thing could have changed again. I think that was fantastic, and the up and close, as how close you were able to get to that, was really exciting. There's this element of controlled danger about it, which I thought was amazing. The trip out to the island, the whole day was fantastic. The boat trip out there, the dolphins, you can see the other volcanoes that had occurred in the past all around you. It was a holistic experience.
Fantastic. Julia, what did you get out of Glacier and being at Mount Cook?
Again, the immediacy of the effectiveness of nature and natural processes, the rain, the glaciation. You could actually almost hear the glacier grind those big U-shaped valleys. The movement of the materials, and also the tenacity of life, the little creatures that were the big trees with tiny little leaves so they could handle the cold, the small birds flitting in and out. It was a whole natural experience. Very enjoyable.
Joy, from a curriculum perspective, because you're well placed to discuss this, what do you believe a trip to New Zealand will do for students?
Well, I think we teach a lot about plate tectonics, but our continent being very old, we don't get to see a lot of mountain building or any of the activity that you would have on an edge of a plate. So that just brings the whole thing alive. Being able to see the stuff bubbling up from the cracks in the earth is amazing. The whole rock cycle experience, we talk a lot about weathering, but we don't have those agents of weathering like the water, in Western Australia being very dry, but to see that massive volume of water pouring down and pounding the rocks is amazing. And it just, I've been studying geology for a long time, but I had never experienced that, and so it brought that alive to me. So you've got the igneous experience, you've got the weathering, you've got the metamorphic experience with all the schists where there is the pressure and heating, and you can see that in the rocks. It just brings the whole experience alive, and it will make the learning so much better for students.
Mike, you've organised 3 tours to New Zealand, the North Island, through group events, and I was just wondering how organising a tour through group events is helpful as a teacher.
The main thing about it is that everything is pretty well done, and you know it's going to be done to a very, very high standard. Charmaine and Rod are really great to work with. Simply ring them up if you've got any concerns, both prior to the trip and after the trip. Yes, during the trip, yes, there have been phone calls during the trip that's also helped us out. But for me, it's the levels of experience. It's not, we take year 10s and years 11, so it's the layering of the experience. So if the kids are there for primarily for the adventure, for the sounds, the sights, the stimulation, that's all there. But beneath that is all the layers beneath it, because at each of the sites you've got experts within the field, so the kids are able to delve. So once they get over the awe factor, they can then start to work on the deeper layers of what they're seeing, and not just with the earth science, also with the biological aspects, and particularly the aspects of the Maori culture, which takes a completely different view on what they're actually seeing.
Ice and water, and I haven't seen natural ice before, and to be floating out, being able to touch icebergs, to see the little rock inclusions in them, it's just amazing, and to see the front of the glacier that they were carving off from, and to realise that those processes were happening within weeks, not geological time. That an iceberg had rolled yesterday, and things were constantly changing, really got to me. So that was the South Island, and then coming to the North Island, where there's all the hot things, the thermal springs, and to be able to soak in a thermal spring was just delicious.
Don't forget the coffee.
But to have the mud bubbling up, the steam, being able to actually I had always thought that geothermal power, you would need to drill deep down into the earth to capture the steam, but seeing all the steam erupting at the surface, I mean, it's so easy. In Australia we don't have that, so I wasn't aware that occurred. So it's been great just to develop the understandings that I had, which were text understandings, and hadn't seen it in the field. Be good. Be
Okay.
great.
Now, after the students do their learning, we have study rewards for them, but some of those study rewards are actually science, as in the luge. What do they learn in science?
Well, there's a lot of stuff about acceleration, about friction, momentum. Heavier people go down the luge quicker, and there's that element of competition, and so that's caught me a bit on the hop. Speed, acceleration, friction,
It's as much
momentum.
as you want to draw out of it. So in other words, it can be simply just a bit of fun for the kids, or you can simply take along data loggers, you could take along accelerometers and stuff like that, and actually turn it into a formal lesson if you wish.
Yeah, depending
So
on
it's really,
what you...
it's the level that you want for your kids and the focus that you're going on to your kids. But sometimes it's good just to leave it as an experiential thing and something to reflect on when you get back.
And refer back to, say you don't touch it then, but later on when you're teaching them acceleration, remember when you were on the luge.
And that, what was that thing with the updraft where we were flying?
Free fall.
The free fall, that's really good, because you've got a balance of gravity and updraft that has to be balanced for you to be able to fly, and for them to experience that weightlessness. That's really good. It's not an experience that they'd be able to have.
Oh, Fiona, you've now experienced New Zealand as quite a fresh earth science teacher, and I'm just wondering what kind of benefit you got from the experience as you're quite new to the subject.
For me, it was a real eye-opener, because it was the extremes of geology were just so prevalent in both the North and South Islands of New Zealand. it's not only do you actually see it, but you taste it, you touch it, you hear it. And for me as a teacher, I think those things are really important for all the students. I do not think that you could get any other place that would be quite as exciting in geological terms. And I think the students would be pretty wowed by it.
Definitely. And so you are planning to bring a school group along in the coming years.
Yeah.
What would be your 3 main highlights that have to fit into your itinerary?
That's not fair.
I'm
actually.
sorry.
There's so many. White Island, definitely. White Island was absolutely splendid. And Mount Cook. I really, really enjoyed Mount Cook with the glaciers, just with the ferocity of the rivers running down, just with the sort of rawness of the whole place. But also Milford Sound. I thought Milford Sound was pretty fantastic, not just in geological terms, but just on the whole general experience.
You've spent quite a while being a biology teacher in particular. What does New Zealand have to offer for biology students?
Also for environmental students as well, because you can, and again, a huge amount, just because of the biodiversity for a start. Also the fact that the way that the land was cleared and how the conservation projects are trying desperately hard to bring back the native animals and plants. And although you see this to some extent in Australia, it's to a greater extent in New Zealand because it's much more extreme. The clearing was almost complete, and now they're trying to regenerate pockets, and have been for about sort of 50 years. So you can actually see bits and pieces happening. Also, as I said, the biodiversity and just the nature of the plants and other bits and pieces. So
There's definitely a lot of spaces you
good
can never
God, yeah,
see.
there's loads and loads and loads of stuff that they would be interested in that I could use in the classroom as well.
Sorry, you are actually bringing a group of students in a short while to New Zealand. What are you most looking forward to your students experiencing?
I think Hell's Gate. Well, the whole experience really. I want to see my kids have fun on the rides. I want to see my kids just enjoy travelling on a jet and going through the airport, travelling to another country. I want to see them mix with other schools and people from the East Coast. And I want to see them, but at Hell's Gate, you know, on the North Island, he's pretty flash. And I'll be really excited to see them walk through that path and experience what it's got to show.
Very different to Australia.
Yeah.
Very different. Okay. If you did so, apart from Hell's Gate, what one other thing would you absolutely
White
put
Island.
on your itinerary? Yeah.
White Island or Mount Ruapehu, up into the ski fields,
Yes.
those two, if I could, but we can't. But they would be fantastic.
Yeah, so the whole active volcano.
Yeah, definitely.
Active volcanoes.
White Island trip was mind blowing.
Absolutely. Okay, and then the whole sort of snowfields. Not something you get in WA either.
Still didn't get to see it myself.
That sucks.
No.
You have to come back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
In June.
Fantastic. So that's it. Well, there you go. Yeah. So that's an absolutely fantastic opportunity for your students. And as a teacher, being able to do this tour, how do you think that's helped you prepare for your impending tour with students?
Well, nothing can compare to experiencing it, can it? I mean, you can see it on video, you can read about it in glossy magazines and little flyers, but you really can't get a sense of what it is until you're there, because it's all your senses getting stimulated when you're there.
Yeah.
And you know, not everything's appropriate, and to make those judgments, you need to go and see.
Fantastic. So you've been able to think about and tailor your itinerary to
Definitely,
your students,
Yeah, what works, what won't work.
and a lot more comfortable for your trip.
Definitely. I mean, through this Famil, you're able to work out travel times, and you're able to, you know, try and keep travel to a minimum, and you can also negotiate because there's so much on offer. You need to cherry pick the things that you think have the most value for the right price. So there's a lot of things you've got to consider: travel, cost, and the experiences that are available.
And having had the experiences, then it's
You
a lot
can make
easier.
that judgment much better.
Definitely. Is there any other?